In an effort to spin their narrative, both the federal government and the media have been confusing you on the standard that needs to be met by the immigration officials before detaining somebody on suspicion of committing a crime, namely being illegally in the United States. The federal government has suggested that they don't need even probable cause in order to stop an individual, while some people are saying, well, what about United States citizens? Doesn't that mean that a citizen could potentially be stopped without probable cause? Well, both people are correct. The Fourth Amendment protects against unreasonable searches and seizures, and generally speaking, officers need to have a warrant before conducting a search or seizure. But the standard of getting a warrant does not apply to the street encounters. Instead, we are talking about either probable cause or reasonable suspicion. And so today, we're going to look at a Ninth Circuit case that was published just this month in July 2025. And it deals with the standard that needs to be met before stopping somebody on the street on suspicion of being illegally in the country. And remember, the Fourth Amendment equally applies to both citizens and non-citizens. And so we're not operating under two sets of laws. We have one Constitution, one Fourth Amendment. And so today we're going to answer this question. We're no longer going to be muddying the water like the media or the government does. We're going to look at the case law and figure it out. And before we go on, I want to thank you for watching me here on YouTube. If you're new to the LAWSTACHE channel, hit that subscribe button. And I also want to share some exciting news. I have completely reworked my shop, all of the merch. And so you can now find it at shop.lawstache.com. You can equally go to the same website that I've always talked about, lawstache.com/merch. But I've added way more products. These popular t-shirts that say "Do not arrest this person" are now available in many more colors. I have a number of hats. Of course, the "Do not arrest this person" stickers, LAWSTACHE stickers, the whole pack is available on the same website. And for a limited time, given the excitement behind this, if you order $40 or more and use the code NOTGUILTY in capital letters, again, not guilty, you will receive 10% off your entire order. So thanks again for supporting this channel. Consider going to shop.lawstache.com.
Quick message from LawStache. Are you charged with a crime? Or do you want to know your rights if stopped by police? Watch California attorney Anton Vialtsin discuss legal cases from the Supreme Court, Ninth Circuit, and California state courts on the LAWSTACHE YouTube page. Anton has handled hundreds of federal and state criminal cases, has an in-depth knowledge of the law, and has the best mustache ever. Subscribe to the LAWSTACHE YouTube page. That's LAWSTACHE.
Today we're discussing a Ninth Circuit case, United States versus Bejar-Guizar. And first, let me give you some factual background. On a foggy morning around 7:30, before all the local businesses opened up, Border Patrol agents noticed an individual walking down the highway that had 2 lanes in each direction and no sidewalk. When the first agent drove by, he thought that something was off, so he radioed another agent to drive in the opposite direction and take a second look. The second agent noticed that this individual was not waving down any of the cars, and his extremities, namely the boots that he was wearing, had a lot of mud on them. So the agent thought that this individual has recently crossed the Tijuana River. And again, the area we're at is Imperial Beach here in San Diego, and it is about 300 yards north of the international border. The agents were familiar with the area, and in fact, they have previously arrested individuals for crossing illegally into the United States in this specific location. So, on their suspicion, they stopped Mr. Bejar and asked him about his citizenship. And he admitted that he was a citizen of Mexico without a legal permission to enter the United States. He said that he crossed with other individuals, but he got lost and now was alone. So with this information, the agents arrested Mr. Bejar and of course charged him with coming into this country illegally. We're now in the Ninth Circuit. He argues that his stop was illegal and that the officers did not have sufficient information in order to detain him. But here's what the Ninth Circuit says. The Fourth Amendment protects against unreasonable searches and seizures. And of course, like I said previously, generally speaking, officers need to have a warrant before they conduct a search or seizure. And of course, when an individual gets stopped, that is a seizure of the person. But courts, including the Supreme Court, have previously said that street encounters do not require a warrant. A lower standard is needed. Now, in this case, the court also reminds us that when the officers do not have sufficient information to meet the probable cause standard, they don't have to shrug their shoulders and move on. Instead, they can rely on what's called reasonable suspicion. So, in order to stop an individual on the street, all that officers need to have is reasonable suspicion before stopping that individual. And by the way, reasonable suspicion that that person is committing a crime. And so here, the agents had reasonable suspicion that this individual was committing an immigration-related offense. So now we have to look more specifically on some of the items that the officers can look at when determining whether they have reasonable suspicion. So here's some of the factors that the Ninth Circuit outlines. First, we must look at the totality of circumstances. Rather than cherry-picking each fact in isolation, we must evaluate all relevant factors together in the context of the stop. Factors may include characteristics of the area, proximity to the border, usual patterns of traffic and time of day, previous alien or drug smuggling in the area, appearance or behavior of the individuals involved, and so on. Second, we must defer to the inferences drawn by the district court and the officers on the scene. Because Border Patrol agents are trained to make inferences and deductions that might well elude an untrained person, our review of the circumstances must be filtered through the lens of the agent's training and experience. And finally, reasonable suspicion review should be focused not on the likelihood of innocent behavior in the context, but of criminal activity. As long as an officer has a particularized and objective basis for suspecting someone of a crime, he need not rule out potentially innocent explanations before making a stop, even if it is far from certain that the suspect is actually engaged in illegal activity. Based on these factors, the Ninth Circuit says that the reasonable suspicion has been met. First, the individual was encountered 300 yards north of the international border. So that's the location. Then the officer testified that the individual was walking on the side of the road that did not have a sidewalk. And the agent said that it is rare and virtually never that he sees somebody walking in that area, other than perhaps homeless individuals. But he says that even them, they stay on the other side of the street. And finally, the most important factor perhaps, the individual had muddy boots. And the agent testified that it is likely because the individual recently crossed the Tijuana River, and that most individuals in that area, when they cross, they become muddy. So those are the factors, and the Ninth Circuit says they amount to reasonable suspicion. But the agent did not stop there. He also talked about potential innocent behavior. And here, the agent testified that the individual was not walking a dog and did not look like a hiker. Some of the reasons why somebody could be muddy in the area. But the agent said that was not the case here. And because of it, reasonable suspicion has been met. So now I thought this clears everything up. When an individual is encountered on the street, law enforcement only need reasonable suspicion before stopping an individual who they think is committing a crime, whether a citizen or non-citizen. They do not need to have probable cause, and of course they do not need to have a warrant. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I cleared it up for you. And if you did, give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the LAWSTACHE channel, hit that subscribe button. Again, I'm excited for my new website, particularly the page that sells the merch. Of course, the website is still the same, lawstache.com, but now you can go to lawstache.com/merch or shop.lawstache.com, where you'll find a bunch of different merch, including these famous Do Not Arrest This Person t-shirts in many different colors. There's of course the white on black and now black on white and a bunch of other colors. I have snapbacks, I have trucker hats, and of course the stickers are all there as well. So go to shop.lawstache.com, and for the next few weeks I'll keep the code going. If you put about $40 into your cart and use the promo code NOTGUILTY, you will receive 10% off. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week for another deep dive on another criminal case.